Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where experts in the field inform, educate and inspire their community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today, Anthony Kilner, is a psychic, medium and author, and the topic we'll be discussing is spiritual insights and healing through psychics and mediums. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks for having me, Megan. It's lovely to be here.
So, Anthony, what's the difference between a psychic and a medium?
A psychic does one thing, a medium does another. They can cross over those boundaries. In mediumship, a medium is there to connect with our departed loved ones from the spirit world. And there's a lot of healing that takes place on a heart level during that connection. Whereas a psychic will use more tools, so tarot cards, divining rods, crystals, those sorts of things, to help someone understand where they're at right now and moving forward. So they're two very different sort of modalities, yet the crossovers are quite often very minimal. So you can have a psychic medium, you can have a straight medium, or you can have someone that calls themselves a straight psychic. What a medium's doing is a medium's there to, like I said, create healing between the person still here alive and the person that's crossed over. And they will share those messages, and if you're looking to go to a medium, you want the medium to give you as much accurate information, because it's all about proof of survival, life after death, whichever way you would like to look at it. Psychic will use their body and the energy of their body to connect to the person's body and give them an understanding of what's going on. And that's where you start getting a lot more information. Now, to highlight that point, I brought in two tools that we can use. One is tarot cards, and this is the Rider-Waite deck, so it's a very old deck, one of the very first decks of tarot, and we can do a whole segment just on tarot. But how would you like to shuffle those for me?
Sure.
And then the other thing I brought in is a set of divining rods, because divining rods are quite often used for not only for finding water and other bits and pieces, they're used by people to get yes and no answers, like a pendulum with a crystal on it, same sort of thing. And so to give you an idea of how this works, I always make sure my hands are locked and I'll ask the question, so open for yes, and they just open up. Then I can go cross over for no, and they'll cross over for no. But then I can say, okay, where's Megan? And point to Megan. Now you can see that's happening without my hands moving, and that's the important part. And so you can get yes, no answers. I use them to measure energy and all sorts of different things. And so that's what you're looking for, is how they react. So one of the things when we talk about how divining rods work is my energy comes through here, it doesn't touch the divining rod at all. And then it flows out and goes up here and up to the spirit world. And this is where I see the universe or spirit actually using it. Now, I can see the energy at the end of this, so I can put my hand up here and grab that energy and just move it like that around. And then I can go back the other way. And it's stretching on me, there you go, and it's going the other way. And so we're talking energy, and the energy of our body in the universe is what helps us understand how things can work and then how we can get our answers for that. Now, you've been shuffling those cards for me. Now, I won't say anything personal or private, but just drag along a card, which one feels right to you. So let's see what you've drawn, Megan.
The King of Cups.
The King of Cups. Wow, what an interesting card to draw. So the King of Cups, you're in your strength, you're emotionally there. Cups represent emotions as one of the main things, and your emotions are contained. You're surveying all that is around you and working out, okay, am I in the good space, not so good space? However, what that tells me is there's some confusion around your emotional state at the moment, and that's okay, you're on top of it. Okay, so it's a very, very brief reading, and we're not getting too personal.
When it comes to healing, I've heard there's different approaches between psychics and mediums.
There is, and there's a school of thought out there that says a medium and a psychic can't be a good healer for different reasons, and I don't subscribe to that, because I believe that all of that energy, it comes from intent and from the heart space. Best healing ever. So if we wanted to break it down a little bit though, a medium can use healing guides, connect up on that level and use universal energy to affect good healing. or energy work, as I like to call it. And a psychic can utilize things like crystals and sound and vibration, again, more tools and their energy to do it. I believe the energy that's supplied by both happens automatically. So some of the modalities like Reiki, where you're using symbology and hands over the body, as different to some healing that is sound related or hands-on healing, they're all sort of quite different in the modalities, but the energy is still coming from Mother Earth, it's still coming from the universe, and then our intent is to bring about or facilitate good, balanced, energetic healing so it gets the body to heal itself.
What advice can you offer our audience if they'd like to book a psychic or a medium or learn about them?
My suggestion is word of mouth is really good. All right, so talk to people. Ask them if they've seen someone they would recommend. You know, there's lots of ways you can look on the internet now and do all sorts of research that way. However, going with somebody that you trust, that tells you that that person was good, that's the way to go. When it comes to things to look for, is you ring up the medium or the psychic, ask what they're going to give you. What are they going to do? How are they going to do it? And, you know, lots of people have rung me up in the year, oh, how good are you? And I think, well, that's so subjective because I'm only as good as my next reading. All right? So don't ask that question. Find out, how long have you been doing it? How are you going to work? What can I expect? Can I bring a photo of my loved one? Those sorts of things. And also have a list of questions that you might want answered. Because even though, for example, a reading might just be mediumship for the whole time, there could be little snippets of psychic stuff that comes into the middle of it. And so you never know what you're going to quite get. But they're the things that I would be suggesting are really strong points to look at, to book a reading or even an energy session, a healing session. To me, whether you're learning or getting a reading, it's got to work practically. It's got to make sense to you. If your teacher or the person you get to give you a reading, if they're not making sense, it's not going to work. And all the same rules apply to finding a teacher, to sit circle, to learn. Question the teacher. Ask how long they've been teaching, what do they teach, how do they teach it, and all those questions are really, really important to ask, and then find out if they'll let you go and sit in their group for a couple of weeks to try it and see how it fits for you.
Thanks, Anthony. That's such rich information. If you'd like to know more about Anthony Kilner and spiritual insights and healing through psychics and mediums, please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, animal communicator and therapist Caroline Pope talks animal communication and breaking down the barriers. Welcome back. Now we have Caroline Pope in the studio, and she is an animal communicator and therapist, and we're going to be discussing animal communication, overcoming barriers. Hi Caroline, welcome.
Hey.
Now I wanted to ask, if are different human languages a barrier to animal communication? So if you were working on communicating with an animal that wasn't from an English-speaking country, how does that affect things?
Providing the person on the other end can also speak English as a second language, it's not an issue because the animal doesn't speak a language per se. They use telepathics. So telepathics doesn't have a language. The biggest problem I actually find with my international people is simply some of the accents I can struggle a little bit to understand, and apparently I have a very broad Aussie accent and very few can understand me. That seems to be the biggest barrier.
So it's a human issue, not
it's
an animal issue.
It's a human issue, not an animal issue.
How does it work? How do you communicate with animals?
For those of you that have seen The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, great trilogy, think of the babble fish. For those that haven't, the babble fish was something that you put in your ear and it'd swim around and it would simultaneously translate any language right throughout the universe. And essentially that's what happens, because it's all about thought. If you're, say, a diplomat and you want to say something to someone who only speaks Russian and someone who only speaks Dutch, the thought pattern's the same. What you want to say might be the same, but the languages are different. So the animal's thought pattern, to me, is always going to be the same. It just happens that I only speak English, therefore I need another English-speaking person on the other end of the phone. The animal doesn't have a language per se. It's all telepathics, it's all energetic thought.
How does the difference between species affect animal communication?
Hugely. That's the biggest job of any animal communicator, is advocating for species difference. You're not going to roll in horse poo and eat it, at least I'm assuming you're not. Your dog will. Dog's not going to jump on Google and Google animal communication. One of my cats once said to me, "Murdering birdies is good for my stress levels. You should try it sometime." Murdering birdies wasn't going to do anything for my stress levels. Drinking coffee wasn't going to do anything for the cat. And everything is within species. You can't blame a dog for being a dog any more than if a horse gets a fright, it's going to shy or bolt, because that's what horses do. And the biggest problem is people that consider themselves animal communicators that have no species awareness. I remember one lady, and look, she was a human psychologist, she was very good, but she'd been speaking to these people with this very, very troubled dog. And they told me what they were doing, and I just went, no, that's crap. You actually do the complete opposite. And within 5 minutes, that dog was lying down. It hadn't laid down for 3 weeks, because the signals they were giving to the dog was actually upsetting the dog. When you understand the species, you understand how to change your signals, because any animal's like a computer. They can only go by the information you're giving. And you're giving any animal information 24/7, 365. The problem is we're not aware of the information we're giving, because we can only see things from our species parameters. My computer guy puts it really well. He says it's like giving Mac commands to a Windows computer and going, why isn't this working? They're two different operating systems. A cat and a dog and a human have 3 different operating systems, and then add that to every species.
So could you please give our viewers some advice on communicating with their animals? Are there any general things to look out for?
Start with someone else's, because you're too close to your own. In the same way, a doctor doesn't treat their own children, or a clairvoyant doesn't generally read. You need to know you're able to communicate, and you know your own too well. You can't detach what is you from what is them. And also you need feedback. You need to know whether you're on the right trail. I mean, having said that, sometimes you'll get something that's just so weird you couldn't possibly have thought it up. And that's when you know it's coming from the animal. But most of the time, practice on others and get others to practice on yours, and start with it that way. Because it's like, a kid's not often going to tell his mum what's going on, but he'll tell a third party. It's exactly the same. So work with that to start with and build up the relationship and the rapport from there.
When you say practice, like what sort of things would you do, say, with a friend's dog? What would you observe?
They might, for example, say, all right, here's a list of 4 questions. See what answers you get. And that's a good one for you. But they need to be answers that the owners know. For example, dogs in shelters. Any dog in a shelter will tell you anything it needs to get out of there, rather than being euthanized. But also, people like to get stuck in the past and, it's because he was a shelter dog till he was 6 months old. Well, yeah, you've had him 12 years and he's still a brat. What's your excuse? People like to keep their animals in victim mode, but they can't know what's gone on. So there's no point in asking what happened while you're in the shelter, or how many homes or whatever have you had before, when you're starting to learn, if the owner can't validate that, because they need to be questions that the owner 100% knows.
So that's you asking in English the dog a question.
Yeah, you might give me a list of 4 questions, and it might be, what does Fido like to eat? Where does he like to go? Some of his favourite activities. and then I'll take a photo and tune in, write down the answers and give them to you. And you can go, those two are right. No idea why you said that. I'll try feeding it to him, see whether he likes it or not, and get back to you. Because you need to know you're on the right path. And it's like a muscle. You don't use it, you lose it. But start with little bits, because you don't go out and run a marathon. As Tuvok used to say, you don't get out of a wheelchair and do advanced aerobics. You don't run a marathon to start with. Little bits and build up. And that's the thing. If I said to you, we're going to learn ancient Egyptian or Latin, no one's going to expect to be fluent in a day, and using the Egyptian, go in and read Tut's tomb. And yet everybody expects to be able to communicate fluently and instantaneously within a day. And sadly, for 99.99% of the population, it takes work. But the rewards are always worth it.
Well, that is fascinating. Thank you so much, Caroline.
You're very welcome.
If you want to know more about Caroline Pope and language and communication with animals, please go to her webpage on our website at healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au, and we'll be right back after this break with another amazing guest.
Stay tuned. After the break, Sue Williams, Doctor of Quantum Counselling and Clinical Hypnotherapist, will be talking about what happens in your brain under hypnosis, unveiling the science. Welcome back. Our next guest, Sue Williams, is a Doctor of Quantum Counselling and a Clinical Hypnotherapist, and the topic we'll be discussing today is what happens in your brain under hypnosis. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Megan. It's lovely to be here again.
So, Sue, what does actually happen in your brain when you're under hypnosis?
So I should just explain our levels of consciousness first. So we are in our normal conscious awareness at the moment. We're using the frontal lobe in our brain to create our thoughts. And in this brainwave, which is beta, it allows us to plan, to think of things in the future, which is an unusual concept. I imagine it's specific to humans, but it's something that we create rather than something that is actually happening, but we're using our consciousness, our awareness. If we're doing a project, if we're doing anything that requires us to do calculations or be creative, that sort of thing. So that's our conscious awareness in the beta brainwave. If we get really excited, it can go up to high beta. And these are all brainwaves that can be monitored with electrical equipment, so we know exactly what that brainwave is at any particular time if we need to. So for hypnosis, we go down to a lower brainwave, a slower brainwave, which is alpha, and that normally is the precursor for going to sleep. So our mind quietens, it just slows down a bit, and then that allows the analytical conscious mind just to drift off and do its own thing for a while, and our subconscious mind then can come forward and we can deal with that in our hypnosis sessions. Further down than that, if we go into an unconscious state, then we're going down into even deeper, slower brainwaves. So that's when we're in a really deep sleep, or for any other reason that we may be unconscious, but we're not aware. We are aware in hypnosis when we're in that alpha brainwave, and that is what makes the sessions so accessible for people to discuss things, because they can speak quite normally and hear what the hypnotherapist is saying. So they are still aware, but they're just not in this normal awareness that we have for most of the day. As humans, we're in and out of trance all day. People say, I can't be hypnotised. And I think, well, have you ever experienced reading a really good book, something where you get really engrossed? You're sitting there reading, your conscious mind is creating all the scenes from the words, and you're experiencing everything that's happening in that book. And an hour's gone by and I haven't even realised it. So you, in essence, have been in trance. Or if you go a similar route from work to home each day, you leave work and you're planning whatever else you have to do. You have to go and buy groceries, or you have to take the kids to sport or whatever. And you get home and you think, how did I get here? And your subconscious mind has taken over because it knows how to drive. If it's a regular route that you go through, it knows which intersections you have to be careful at. And you have been perfectly safe because that's subconscious mind's job, to keep you safe. So it's something that we do regularly, all day, every day, in and out of trance, just for a few seconds perhaps, or for longer, depending on what we're doing.
Is there any scientific evidence to back it up?
Oh, absolutely. If we go back to the 18th century, so the 1700s, Franz Mesmer, people will know the term being mesmerised, being really engrossed in something. He was probably one of the fathers of more modern hypnosis. It changed from just trance to being hypnosis. And through the 19th century, there were further developments, but it really got going in the 20th century with a lot of scientific research, how the mind works specifically during hypnosis. I know in a lot of movies they show that you can have your mind taken over by the hypnotist, and that person can make you do all sorts of things that you would not normally do. Well, in real life, it's almost impossible for the hypnotherapist to take over your brain, because your morals, your thought patterns, the way you live your life is so strong within you. So don't be scared about what you see in the movies, because it's not possible in normal hypnotherapy sessions.
What can you offer our audience that would like to go on this journey themselves?
I've said many times, I wish people would come to the hypnotherapist as their first port of call, not as that last desperate effort to find help. And because it's becoming to be more widespread, hypnotherapists are tending to specialise. In the past, you would go to a hypnotherapist for just everything, like you would go to a GP. But now you can actually go straight to that specialist hypnotherapist. So if you have a lot of stress, if you have anxiety, depression, that type of thing, we have so many really good qualified hypnotherapists who can help you specifically with that. My practice is helping athletes and sporting teams, and by doing that I can help them with their mental focus, get them to train their own brains so that when they're on the starting line or out with the team waiting for the whistle to blow, they go into the zone. So we can train them to do that. We can train them to use their mind to overcome injuries so that they can get back on the field so much quicker. Very common ones obviously are ceasing smoking and shedding weight. So there are a lot of specialist practitioners who can help you with that as well. And I really have not heard of anyone who's not a genuine, caring, helping person.
Thanks so much, Sue. If you'd like to know more about Sue Williams and what happens to your brain when it's under hypnosis, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And we'll say goodbye for now and see you next week. If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.